In previous podcasts and in our release plan generator, we've talked through release related checklists, and those things are important, but they're only half of a successful release. That's just the mechanics. You still need to provide the magic, the story, the journey, the reason, the interest. And when releasing music in 2023, this is going to be more important than ever. And in today's episode, we're going to dive into all of that.
You're listening
to the CD Baby
CD Baby
DIY
Musician
Podcast. Hey there, and welcome to episode number 325 of the CD Baby DIY Musician Podcast. My name is Kevin Bruner, and joining me is Chris Robley. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about releasing music in 2023. The music industry continues to evolve, and how you approach the market needs to evolve as well. Chris, it's our first recording in 2023. When we started this podcast, I didn't even think we'd make it to see 2023. Not just the podcast, but just in general.
You mean just as a species?
As a species.
Would we get this far? Yes, we have.
We've made it. We've made it. No, I'm excited about this podcast. I'm excited about 2023. I think I'm the most excited I've been about diving into all of these music-related topics than I have been for a while. Over the Christmas break, I've been doing a lot of experimenting on social media with making my own videos. I've also been going through some new content training for various platforms that have me really excited and learning new things, because all these tools that we use and how people engage with them are evolving so quickly. So if you felt like you were a master of some of these platforms like 3 years ago, what you know is so outdated and so may not be working anymore. That could be frustrating because it just isn't working. So I'm feeling excited, and I love the content that we're going to be diving into today about releasing music. But before that, how are you doing? You excited about 2023?
I am. I'm good. And I was going to say, in addition to you making videos and stuff, you and I have both been consulting with a couple of other artists on their release strategies and a bunch of stuff that it's really been fun for me to kind of put on my, creative marketing cap when it's not for my own music, and like to both pat myself on the back and then also tease some of the stuff we're going to be talking about in this episode. But we've been doing a really good job. Like, this artist I'm working with and I have been getting amazing results for her release and her sort of preparation for an album release. So I really want to brag and to get into the nitty-gritty of that stuff. But I was also going to say, our last episode was predicting 2023. We were going to look ahead, and we missed something about 2022. We got featured in
Yeah.
And it happened in August, and I literally didn't even see it until today.
Yeah, I don't know why it popped up today, but yeah, 12 musician podcasts to help you level up. And right there on the list, near the top of the list, the DIY Musician Podcast. And there's a lot of other great podcasts on there, like And the Writer Is, who Ross Golan was a keynote at our conference back in August. That was an amazing session. Switched on Pop is on the list, which I love that podcast as well. I tried to get them at the conference, but hopefully we'll see them in the future. Their podcast is awesome. I love their format.
And this is the recommendation of Spotify for artists. So it's kind of cool
Yes.
to just have, like, a sort of major DSP who has a very large podcasting emphasis to their platform recommending us.
Yes.
So thanks to Tom Roston and Bianca Gracie. Thanks to them.
Yeah, thanks to them. And it's a new year, Chris. I'm starting with a new hairdo, new hairstyle.
I noticed it's a little more combed up.
I'm letting the curls have their moments. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can check that out.
And mine is just an unruly winter mop, which is why I have this cap on to try and contain it. It's also cold today here, so.
And if I seem a little off today, Chris, I had the weirdest dream that I woke up to, where one of those dreams where you wake up and it takes you a minute to go, was that real? Was that not real? But it was me hanging out with Axl Rose. and it wasn't like a fan, artist relationship. We were buds, but the whole dream, I was just trying to get a selfie of us and couldn't like the phone kept breaking. I kept losing the phone, kept getting interrupted. It was just like, but the funny thing is that's how a lot of my dreams are. They're usually music related. And I can't accomplish the task. Like U2 says, hey, you can play a guitar with us for this show. And I can't find my guitar. It was just here. I'm looking all over for it. I get on stage, it breaks. My hands don't work. I should probably see a therapist.
I thought the dream with Axl Rose was going to be about just letting yourself be in the moment because you couldn't take the selfie, but just be with Axl. But clearly your dream is really about, I don't know, lack of preparation.
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe that's my problem. The funny thing was, you know, we were just cool. We were just having a good time hanging out together. And, you know, we got a lot in common. We're both redheads. We've both been in bands that have had various degrees of success.
His
and
a certain level. And
depending on your success metric, you could say that my band's been more successful. We've released
you're all still friends and together.
We're still friends
with the original
we've released 10 albums. They've only managed to release 5 because they can't get their crap together. So yeah, you know, it was one of those where I woke up and I'm like, what on earth was that? But anyway, we should move on. And if anyone wants to diagnose that, feel free to hit me up. We've got a lot of great content today. We've got a lot of great episodes coming up this season. So don't forget to subscribe if you're listening on the Apple Podcast app, which I was looking at our stats. That's still where most people are listening to, which kind of surprises me. Spotify is another big place where people are listening. Be sure to subscribe. YouTube, we've been gaining an audience on YouTube, and you know, you get to see our faces, and sometimes like our episode with TikTok, that format actually has some added visuals. So if you enjoy YouTube, be sure to check us out there, subscribe, hit the notification button. And if you want to connect with what Chris and I have been doing, we'd love to connect with you on our personal socials. Chris is at Chris Robley. I'm at K Bruner. I've been making a lot of videos on Reels and TikTok lately and doing a lot of experimenting there. I'd love for you to check them out. And yeah, I know both of us have a lot of interesting things we're working on in the new year. So it'd be great for you to follow along. And for today's episode, we're talking about releasing music in 2023. And that's a big topic. And, you know, we've done this topic every year, but what I'm excited about today's content is that I feel like we've got some fresh takes, Chris. We've really been, like you said, we've been working with some artists. We've been doing some things ourselves. Obviously, we've been doing music for years, and the industry is changing, and it can kind of feel like, well, now what? You know, we kind of get those moments. And then after thinking about it, I think we've got some fresh new takes to dive into today. So I'm going to give a quick rundown of the table of contents. If you're watching on YouTube, there's chapter markers. So if you want to skip ahead to certain sections, it makes it super easy. But we've got some backstory on releasing music. We're going to talk about why creating demand is key, creating demand for your music. We're going to be talking about experimenting with the mechanics and content, and talk about looking at socials differently than what we have maybe traditionally thought about social platforms. We're going to talk about defining yourself as an artist, building anticipation and participation for your releases, stripping away distractions, and owning your audience. So we're going to dive into a lot of those things. And then we've got some emails and some calls. And so if there's a topic that's on your mind or a marketing struggle that you have, feel free to send us an email or call our listener line. We'd love to get it on the show. You can call our listener line at 360-524-2209 or email us at podcast@cdbabypodcast.com. And yeah, I just want to have a great new year of interaction and all of us growing together and feeling excited to release music in a world that has 1,000 new tracks a day.
At least. Yeah.
So you want to start us off with some of the backstory? Like,
yeah,
you and I were talking about content without mechanics, and yeah, why don't you dive into that? Because I think that's a big piece that was sort of where my brain has been in the last few months, in how we can get lost in the marketing world just talking about mechanics.
Well, I think when the intro you gave to this podcast said, hey, in the past, we have emphasized these mechanics, the sort of building the plumbing or an electrical framework of your house and stuff, but you still have to populate the house with warmth and style and furniture and all this stuff. And I do want to say we're not apologizing for emphasizing the mechanics. That's all important. And if you listen closely to any of those older episodes, we always do also talk about story and leading fans on a journey and understanding your fans and all that stuff. But I think the reason we really want to go lean hard in that direction is because so many music industry, like talking heads, marketing gurus, lean on the mechanics. They say, here's your top 20 ways to get Spotify streams this year. And it's like, upload a canvas, claim your profiles, all these things that you absolutely should do and are super important, but they seem kind of easy to talk about. It's just, it's like just a checklist. So they don't necessarily dive as much into the heart and soul, the nitty gritty of what it's like to be an individual artist who has to find and entertain and keep not an individual fan base, but a unique fan base. So I think that's where we're going with this one. And to the degree that it still needs mechanics, I've been trying to think of it as more like you want to pull off a magic trick. Well, that's like entertaining your audience, wowing them, while also kind of impressing yourself and having fun at the same time. And magicians, they got to practice. They got to, acquire a rabbit and a hat and all this stuff. But there has to be a payoff. So that's what we're going to be trying to talk about today, the magic side of all this.
Making it in music is truly a magic trick for sure. I think part of like why you and I were talking about this and some of the content I was feeling of like, there's so much music being released and so many artists going like, how do I even get cut through all the glut and get people to care? And I think we went through a period of time where the idea of releasing music or successfully releasing music just meant going into hyper release mode. Throw out a track, throw out a track, throw out a track. And there are some strategies around that do work. I don't want to discount that or say that none of that has valid validity, but also the idea of the mechanics of marketing. It's like, just because you create an email list doesn't mean people are going to take action when you email them. Your email has to be interesting and good. Just because you're on social networks doesn't mean that people are going to follow along or do anything. You have to provide something of value and content that's meaningful. And, so I think a lot of times we can emphasize, oh yeah, you need to do this every day or do that every day, but you can do lots of things every day. But if they don't have value or meaning or impact on the people seeing it, then you're just wasting your time. And I think a lot of times we spend so much time just saying, oh yeah, go collect emails, go do this, go set up that thing, go launch this thing. And without really understanding what people are looking for or the state of affairs with how people are engaging with information, I think you can do a lot of work that just falls on deaf ears.
Yeah. And I think both in the music world and in kind of like a professional marketing capacity, you and I both know like good content without the mechanics and infrastructure can really just easily get lost in the noise. But the flip side is if all you have is mechanics and infrastructure without value and personality and all the stuff that makes content worthwhile, then all you have is a process. And like, what's the point of a process if there's nothing good that comes of it? So,
yeah. And I think you raise a valid point that there's a lot of artists out there making amazing content that the fan interaction dies right there, meaning they've got this audience, but they then aren't strategically funneling them into something, those mechanics that bring them into a closer relationship where they own that fan relationship and they're able to monetize it more fully. Because I think for some people, there's this idea of, I make music, it exists, therefore people should listen to it and appreciate it for what it is. That attitude's still out there. I still run into artists that think that way. And, so.
Well, I know we have a list. I don't know if you want me to run through it quick, but it's basically like the problems that can arise when you think of the mechanical rote sort of release strategy of, maybe that's been emphasized over the past 5 years. So, I mean, the first one is that when you emphasize a frequency of release habit for its own sake, then you're basically throwing this music out there without proving that there's demand. And frequency can lead to attention sometimes, but really, I think it's only worth putting something out when you already know that someone wants to hear it. So that's the first thing, not relying on frequency to create demand, but frequency as a way of meeting demand. And another thing you already mentioned is just the glut. I mean, competition is fierce. There's so much music out there. So again, no one's going to care about it just because you put something out. And
Can I say one thing about
yeah,
those two things you said? I think part of the reason why there's a shift in thinking here too is because you reach a saturation point where some of this frequency people were trying to play on keywords or gaps in things that were out there, like various types of cover songs. And you get to a point where all those content gaps are filled. And so just throwing stuff out there is not going to work like it did in the past.
People, we don't need any more of those particular songs covers or whatever. Yeah. Well, you had made a point the other day when we were kind of building the outline for this, where you said like in the 20th century or kind of an old fashioned way of driving interest. Well, first of all, it relied on a massive budget, and its objective was to kind of make a strong case for you to part with your money, which is a difficult ask. You know, you had to buy a $15 CD or a whatever $40 concert ticket. And the way they did that was just saturation of your attention through like repetition on the radio and stuff and blanket coverage in the media. And I feel like that definitely had benefits to allowing people to kind of overcome their own bias. Like maybe you didn't like that song the first 20 times you heard it, and then something cracks open and you're like, oh, cool. This repetition has actually helped me change my taste. The opposite is probably also true. You hated the song for good reasons, and then they just annoyed you, bludgeoned you to death with it until finally,
submission.
Like, all right, fine. It's in my head. It's catchy. All right. But you know, I think there was a benefit to that. We don't have that ability anymore necessarily to bludgeon people because there's so much stuff out there, and we don't have the money to guarantee that attention. So basically, what we're asking of an audience is relatively tiny compared to the old ask of buy a CD. I mean, it's like pay attention to my video for 5 seconds and then click play or whatever. Like pretty small. On the other hand, we have to get them to do that the first time around, like, which means the content, the messaging has to be better in a way, however you define better. It has to be more hooky. You know, so it puts a huge demand on us as content creators and marketers and storytellers. Yeah. So, I mean, I just think that's certainly a new challenge.
And that's a challenge for the whole market, not just independent artists.
Yeah.
Because you see that happening, that question being wrestled with even the major labels, like that exact thing.
Yeah. And I guess like a way to say it is that like we lack the ability to have repetition. So our messaging has to be exceptional.
Yes.
And the next thing on the list was basically, there's a big difference between capturing attention and keeping attention. And I feel like what indie artists, probably all artists, certainly I am guilty of, is doing something that captures it, but then I don't have a follow-up plan. And I don't do the things that are required to make people remember that they like me and all these things. And so it just gets squandered. That effort just kind of goes to waste in a way. And then another thing about attention is I think we seek the wrong kinds of attention. And you and I addressed this in our hamster wheel episode where we just said, what was it called? Is social media dead?
I think it's social media dead.
Yeah, we really just ranted about how I think we're using social all wrong and kind of we're working for social as opposed to the other way around. And you wake up one day and you're like, wait, I'm just a content creator now. Like I made these funny skits and that's what people like. So no, I no longer perform my depressing folk songs on video anymore. That's what I really want to do. I wanted to be a depressing folk singer, but now I'm a funny TikToker. And while that might be good for quote attention, it's bad for our music career for a lot of reasons we'll talk about later.
Two things on those points, real quick. I had a meeting with people at TikTok recently, and they specifically said, because I was asking them about a situation with a friend's TikTok account where they got a video went crazy viral because they mentioned pickles. And it was like all these people weighing in about pickles, and it's their artist account. And they're like, they don't want to be about pickles, but it got over 1 million views. And my question to TikTok was like, what should they do with this? Because that's not what they want their account to be about. Is there a way to, and all these people following them now, it's not related to music. And they're like, well, the key thing is they need to keep that attention. But their advice on how to keep that attention was not in line with what the artist wanted to do.
Was basically make more pickle content.
Yes. Like they said, you should do a video where the microphone's a pickle. And I'm like, that I don't know. That seems kind of lame and maybe even kind of sexual. I don't know, but that's...
I guess that advice is coming straight from TikTok, but at the same time, that sounds so TikTok in a bad way. No, how about get back to the music somehow?
But, well, that's what they were trying to do. But anyway, the main point that they were saying is that you've got attention, you got some attention. The key is keeping that attention. The other thing, through some of the content training I've gone through, there was a video by someone from TikTok specifically saying that their algorithm has changed in the last 6 months, and they've been changing it. And it's entirely possible to get the wrong kind of attention that can really actually damage the long-term impact of your account. By jumping on just trends, you can get a bunch of followers that have nothing to do with you. They're there because you made a funny trend video. They're not there because they enjoy the content you create. And that going forward could have a negative impact on your account.
Yeah. And I know 2 episodes ago, we really completely dove into trends on TikTok. And so I guess the one thing to emphasize about that episode is that no matter what you're doing, do it with your own personality and style, and try to get it related back to your music somehow, even if it is a trend. But
yeah.
And one thing you were griping about it in preparation for this episode is basically like YouTubers have created a lot of bad habits and expectations when it comes to modern marketing, like, which I think you said, like, we think we just should like make something and throw it out now. Not throw it in the trash, throw it out into the world. Or maybe that's the same thing.
Yeah. Well, I think that, again, those strategies can still work. And I think what it is that traditionally the music business for decades had a very singular release model strategy: get it on radio, get it to retail, get advertising. And then as the independent market grew and indie artists had to get very innovative, and platforms matured like YouTube and things like that, new strategies popped up that were exciting and worked for artists. But then our tendency is to go back to that idea. Well, now this is the singular release model, and this is what everybody has to do. And what I think the point in a lot of what we're going to talk about today is that there are a lot of parallel release strategies now, and some work for some artists and some won't for others. And so just to see what some other artists doing, and it's easy to create bad habits or just fall into patterns of taking shots in the dark, I guess, because a lot of the YouTubers are banking on search terms and fresh tracks that are dropped by Beyonce that they cover really fast in their own style of music. And for most artists, that's not what we're trying to do.
Yeah. I'm laughing because we're 25 minutes in, and I think we're now just about to get into the bulk of what you should do. Now we've complained about maybe what you shouldn't do and all the problems.
Yeah. Well, it took a little time with my Axl Rose anecdote.
It's all worth it.
Do you think he listens to our podcast?
This is the one. This is the episode.
This is the one. Somebody tag Axl. Tell him he needs to start listening.
I mean, wasn't Duff McKagan our very 3rd episode?
No, he was like 19 or something.
Oh,
but
still, the first year.
That's right. I'm like 1 degree away from Axl Rose. I've totally forgot about that.
Heck yeah. Well, so what should people do? Now we've said what not to do. What should they do in 2023?
Yes. Well, I think one thing you were talking about, and from some of the experience you had with the artists you're working with, you said there's little point in releasing anything until you've proven demand. And I would say we're not saying don't release music. But I think what we're saying is that just throwing music out there isn't gonna cause anything to happen. I think that's the number one question I get from artists now is like, it's out there, so what? You know, nobody's listening to it. How do I get people to listen to it? And the barrier to entry is the lowest it could possibly be. It's free. They just have to push play. Why can't I get people to push play?
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about this in like so much we talk about successful releases, and like that even might be jumping a step too far for this discussion, because essentially what I'm saying is like you need to have a relevant release. And I'm in this case, I'm defining relevance not as the quality of your music, but does anyone hear it? Because if you put out the best album, but literally like 1 or 0 people ever hear it, it's irrelevant. Like no matter how good the art is. So to make a relevant release before it can even be successful, I think requires building an audience that you know with some degree of mathematical certainty is going to listen to your music and enjoy it. And so, yeah, the thing I'm excited to get into is talking about how I've been working with this songwriter named Alice Howe, who I met through sort of the Folk Alliance Americana world. And she put a lot of time and attention into making this album that she recorded at Fame Studios in Muscle Shoals. And she did a really successful Kickstarter and raised like, I think like $50,000. But she had relatively no activity happening on Spotify or on streaming in general. So she kind of has this grassroots fan base. It's very much about live shows and the kind of folk radio world, but not a bunch of digital streaming activity. And so she said, like, I don't want to just drop this album into the void. I need to make sure, yes, my fans who gave me $50,000 through Kickstarter are going to buy the album and the vinyl and they're going to listen to it. But what else do I do? Because I wanted to do something on Spotify. And so we brainstormed and I said, you can't just put the album out and not even that, you can't just put your first single out or your second single and expect anything to happen. We have to dig into how to build something. We have to get an on-ramp going. And so we looked back at all of her video content that she had already created. And there was a video from 2 years prior that's just her in her backyard playing this John Prine cover with her collaborator bassist playing tuba. And I instantly was like, oh, this is the video. Like, we have to run this as an ad. It's charming. It's like right from the beginning, she's got this great smile and she's laughing. So instantaneously you feel like you're, I don't know, picking up in the middle of a moment. Maybe you missed the beginning of it, but now you're happy to have arrived. The song is well played. It's a John Prine song, so Americana fans will love it. It seemed to have everything you want for like an outreach ad. So I said, we got to run this. And she was like, I don't know. It's for one, it's a cover. 2, it's from 2 years ago. That's old. And I said, not to the million people we're about to show it to. And she was like, all right. And I said, wait, look, like, let me test like 3 or 4 of your favorite videos and that one. So I set up a campaign, ran them as, outreach ads, just a video ad served to strangers. I know we're going to talk about targeting later, so I can go into the details of that. But lo and behold, that particular video went crazy viral. It's been seen like 1 million times on Facebook and like, I don't know, 500,000 times on TikTok and all this stuff. And it did exactly what I wanted it to do. It brought in a ton of excitement. And what we did with that excitement, I can kind of talk about later, but it was a very important first step of making massive impressions on strangers, which was the first step in getting people over to Spotify, which we have since been doing in a very successful way.
Yeah. And while you were going through that, I've been working with an artist named Melody Ryan. She had quick backstory, had recorded an album, bad experience, didn't sound like she wanted it to sound like, so she hasn't really promoted that, trying to find her sound. And so I was working on, trying to strategize going into a new recording to make sure that it was what she wanted, her artist image and branding was all in line, all that. Well, all of a sudden she writes this Christmas song at the end of November. And I'm like, it's way too late to distribute a Christmas song. And so with that in mind, I'm like, but we can use this as a lead gen item to build some interest in what you're doing now. You're recording again, you're writing, you're going to be recording soon, you're writing. So let's just use it to build some anticipation. We're not going to release it. And we'll just do several variations of the song. and look at it as we're trying to build anticipation, interest, just showcase you as an artist. And don't worry about releasing it right now, because one, we can't. Christmas will be over and you'll just burn this song. So let's just do that for now. And then you can do a full recording of it later and release it next season. And to me, I think looking at it that way really helped narrow in on some real needs at the moment, which for her was really like just kind of reinvigorating her fan base around music, because it hadn't done a lot since the pandemic, and really starting to signal I'm writing, recording, come along for the journey, get on my list. And so we used it as a lead gen to get email list, build up the email list. And I felt like at the end of the day, when I thought about it, I'm like, that was the right move. Take the pressure off trying to get this track out to the world, because what the need wasn't to have it sit on Spotify and nobody listening to it. The need was to get the story going again after a long break because of the pandemic. And she had been playing some shows like the fall. She really ramped up playing shows again and was like, I'm back in. I want to get this thing rolling. And so, and she was at our conference, and I had started talking to her about that at the conference. So to me, I was like, wow, yeah, that's building that anticipation. It's so easy for us to just skip that step because we have access to throw tracks out into the market, but it's just like they're sitting on the digital shelf and nobody cares. So let's focus on building that anticipation and getting people to care in the story, to hear the song. And I think, especially with TikTok, how TikTok works, it's easy to repost a song in different formats over and over again, and it not necessarily negatively impact you, but it kind of has that effect like radio, where that emphasis of people, like, they hear it and they're like, cool. And they hear it again, they're like kind of bopping along, like, oh, I really like this song. And then, now they're in, and now you've created some anticipation where they'll leave the platform and go add it to the playlist or go listen on Spotify or wherever they listen to music. So that to me is like, that was sort of an aha moment for me of like, wow, a lot of times we skip this step, and it's okay to just focus on building that anticipation. And sometimes it'll work and sometimes it won't,
Well, I think that's a good bridge to our next point, because essentially what it sounds like you're talking about is building a funnel or an audience journey in real time, as opposed to, like, you and I have talked a lot about marketing funnels. And for anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's just a kind of a journey you lead your audience through from, point A to point Z. And maybe towards the beginning, they're strangers. They don't know you. By the end, they love you and they buy your stuff. And you have to kind of sequentially lead them through that. And I think a lot of times when we've talked about funnels, it's all kind of preordained, pre-scripted. It's like, this is the lead part. This is the follow-up ad. And what I've been doing with Alice and what you were just talking about with Melody is sort of figuring it out as you go, but at least being intentional about there being a next step. And what that leads me to is the second part. I think successful or relevant releases, artists have to be willing to experiment with both the mechanics and the content. And like for Alice, I mean, it's been great working with her in a lot of ways, because I'll just say first, she's talented, and I hope it would like kind of go without saying that if she weren't, none of this would go anywhere. She has a budget, which is immensely helpful. And but thirdly, she has been willing to just kind of work hard and follow some guidance. I mean, she's always sticking with her own personality, but she's like excited to just get to work and try stuff, which has been so cool as like a marketing, whatever you consultant or whatever you want to call us. Like, it's sort of the ideal person to work with, as opposed to the artist. It's like, no, I will not do that. I am an artist. I will only do what I have deemed is, we're like, she wrote me the other day, is like, I'm just going to make 3 TikToks a day and they'll probably all be crappy, but eventually that will lead me to some kind of unself-conscious freedom where I'll get really good. I'm like, sweet. That's awesome.
I was laughing earlier when you were talking about the video options, and she's like, I don't know about that one. I was like, I've had so many conversations with that Christmas single. I'm like, please just trust me.
Well, to her credit, she said fine, or even yes, like, I'll trust you, do whatever you want. So her like skepticism didn't last long, I guess I'd say. But with her willingness to deviate from the plan, what that has allowed her to do is say, I have this album. I have a vision for what this album is, but because I need an audience, I'm willing to do these things that are still related to my own music because I'm performing to get a cover out there. It's an impromptu performance. I'll run it as an ad. And then there was a tuba in the video, which then made me think, oh, you guys should actually record this song like in a studio. Like this is just wasted attention. We've got millions of people paying attention, sharing, liking, like put the damn song out. And she was like, yes. They were on tour and they were touring through Boston. They found a studio to go in, like probably 3 hours of time, which meant they also had to find a tuba because they were on the road. I was like, oh, you have to go and then shoot a TikTok video about searching for a tuba. Like, do you look through Craigslist? How did you find it? The hunt for it, going to the house of the person. And then, so the video, she shoots it all. And at the end, the person who rented the tuba to them had another tuba. So now this guy Freebo, who is her bass player collaborator, is playing a tuba. The other guy's playing a tuba. The cat's in the corner freaking out. Like, this is great. So
that's a lot of tuba.
Yeah, but it was a lot, but it was perfect because it's another thing of like, she just went with this concept of like, yeah, I can create an adventure out of this and it's humorous, but every step of what I'm doing, not me, every step of what she's doing with this content is referring back to the first piece of content that people fell in love with. So there's a connection point and they can say, oh, I know exactly why they're searching for a tuba because it relates to this first video. And oh, cool, they're finding it so they can go into the studio. Now there's anticipation for the song to be recorded. We'll talk about anticipation later, but basically just another step in the journey.
Well, when you told me this story, what I loved about it is there's so many good nuggets to take away from. One, when artists say, well, I want it to be about the music, I don't want to have to do all these other things. That is absolutely about the music, but it's about the music in a way that people who aren't musicians have no idea what it's like and what we go through, the ridiculous things we do in order to create this stuff. I mean, find a tuba. The first thing when you were telling me the story the other day, my mind going, oh, they're going to get to the end and this tuba's going to look like it got run over by a bus or something, because it was always get beat up.
It was pretty dented. It was pretty dented.
I'm sure there's plenty of videos of like marching bands where the tuba guy takes a tumble and the tuba is just all mangled. Someone's probably correcting me now, saying there's a difference between a tuba and a sousaphone. But anyway, not only that, if it's done well, it creates this open loop that your fans start thinking, well, did they find the tuba?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like that interesting nugget of fun that brings them back into you as an artist and your journey, and makes it interesting so they feel somewhat invested in the outcome, even though they have nothing to do with it. It's kind of like watching a TV show and it ends and you're like, oh, I got to find out what happens in the next episode. It's kind of releasing your content in that way. So to me, that's about the music. That's fun. That's interesting. That's something anyone can do. You just have to think about, hey, I should turn the camera on and get and just say a quick thing to the camera. We're trying to figure out where you find a tuba, and then it doesn't even have to be that hard.
Well, and the simple truth behind all of that is, as musicians, we take our own lives for granted in a way. It doesn't feel like an adventure. It feels like work to us. But just, first turn the camera on, or actually maybe first try to think of how your life is an adventure that other people might not know about, and then turn the camera on. And I think to sum up the compliments I'm trying to pay to Alice around this whole sort of pre-album marketing thing is, she's not precious. She's just like, she's not going to do something that feels totally out of character. She knows who she is. But I think out of that kind of groundedness as an artist, she's like, yeah, I'll try some fun stuff. So not being precious has been also very nice to work with an artist like that.
Yeah, I think a lot of this, when trying to build anticipation, what section are we on here?
Oh, we're still on section 2. We've got like 7,000 to go.
Oh, some of them will be quicker. What I like about the story, I think where a lot of artists struggle is it's scary to put stuff out into the world, and our music is, speaking of precious, is very precious to us. It's like it is feeling like you're opening up your soul to the world, and it feels like in most cases they're just stomping on it. I think you have to get over that. And you have to be willing to throw things out there and take risks and put yourself in situations where you may look stupid. Um, I feel like when I recently I was kind of looking back at my music career, my professional career, and I think some of the biggest wins that I've had and some of my biggest humiliations have both been from being willing to do that and being okay with either outcome. Um, I came across that video I did where I was making fun of Sony for saying that they were now going to pay artists monthly. And that was just something where I'm like, I could get fired for this, but it's so dang funny. And I can't pass this up because I think it's going to be huge. And it went totally viral. And, but then also I was thinking about that panel we did at Music Biz about the mistakes of George Lucas that just totally bombed.
Oh yeah.
Where we looked so stupid.
Well, did we? I mean, so we probably did, but I don't feel like, I don't know, was the content bad? I just think there was only 6 people in the audience.
Well, it was all about hating on the prequels. And at the end, remember one of the 6 people in the audience raised his hand and said, I'm confused. I liked the prequels. Like,
wrong.
But I think there was something I saw recently that it was talking about content creation. Like I said, I've been going through a lot of content courses and following more people giving that advice on social, but I actually bought and going through a couple content things. But one of their things they were saying is that being a creator, it means that if you're going to fail most of the time or face rejection or seeming failure most of the time, and you got to get over that. You got to be willing to deal with that. And I think that's sort of what started me on reflecting on some of those things, because when I was going to Nashville, when I went to Nashville to college, what was shocking to me is like I was on the bottom tier of talent of people that were in school for guitar. But so many of them that were amazing, could have been the next household name guitar player, were so scared of facing rejection, they gave up and went home. And it just blew my mind. And I was sitting there going, well, what does that say for me?
You're like, because I already know I suck. I might as well take every opportunity I can get.
But I took the opposite approach. I'm like, I'm going to put myself out there in uncomfortable situations. And believe me, there were a lot where I looked ridiculous and failed, but I'm still willing to do it. And so to me, you got to be willing to do that. And to me, that can be a big barrier to building sort of that following. And because if you're like, I'm not going to put it out until I feel good about it, well, then chances are you're just not going to move forward and put anything out.
Yeah. Well, speaking of putting things out, our third point is to look at social networks differently. And when we think about putting things out, I think not only do we mean don't jump on the hamster wheel, make sure everything you are putting out refers back to some goal you have, or even if that goal is entertain my audience and remind them that they like my music, but to not assume that every platform is good for the same thing. And so with Alice, I have noticed that TikTok has been really good for her to gain organic attention. Not so great in terms of remarketing or anything yet. I think maybe we could dial that in, but sort of at face value, TikTok seems to be good for her to get organic attention. Instagram seems to be the best place for her to kind of be presentational. I don't know, sort of branded, like the stuff that is the most like, this is me in a kind of curated way seems to be on Instagram. And then Facebook has been straight up just like the best place for us to advertise, because we're getting like 0.001 cent clicks over to Spotify, like from some video ads that we've been doing. So amazing advertising results on Facebook, great branding on Instagram, and great organic attention on TikTok. And I think it's because she's treating them all differently. So I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think at this point we can say a couple things and move on, because I think we need to do a whole new social media in 2023 episode about this, because I think we've typically looked at social media like, oh, there was MySpace and then that platform fell out of relevance, and then Facebook came to rise, and then it felt like it was falling out of relevance, but it's still here. And then it was Instagram. That one's the cool place where all the young people are. And well, that's not it anymore. Now it's TikTok, and weirdly Snapchat has made this big resurgence. and then there's Twitch and other platforms, and Twitter seems to maybe having a new life, who knows. But the thing that to me is that we tend to go, oh, well, this is where the cool new platform is. And that's not how you should be looking at social media. Sure, there might be one platform that you prefer that's more fun, the way you create content, or the way you engage with people and other people's content. There may be a platform you prefer. But if you're just discounting all the other platforms, you're doing it wrong. Because like Chris, you just said, Facebook is still the place to target people and get conversions off platform for very little money. And each of them have their strengths and weaknesses based on your marketing goals. So that's something that you need to think about. And it's worth having, a profile on all the major platforms. You don't have to use them, but when it comes to releasing music, there may be opportunities that various platforms have better strengths around.
Yeah, totally.
So it's not, this is the cool platform now. I mean, we've reached this social media state where, a lot of the platforms are mature and have value for different reasons. And so that's something that's important to keep in mind.
Yeah, another thing we're going to talk about, could probably be quick about it too, is to define yourself as an artist. This is so essential before you put out a release. And we have that episode of our podcast called the Authentic Artist Branding Bootcamp, which is kind of digging into who you are, what you say, who your audience might be, and then how to quickly communicate it. But I think another thing that we're emphasizing here when you're defining yourself is continually define yourself as an artist in your content. So don't get on the hamster wheel and lose or confuse people by suddenly being a gimmicky, trend-following, humorous content creator. And if you do, make sure it at least always comes back to your music. So this is the warning of the pickle problem of 2022. Or even to bring it back to Alice for a second, I feel like I'm going to keep talking about her stuff, but she had this video that went pretty viral on TikTok. I think it has in the millions of views. And it's her and her collaborator Freebo. He's in a car next to her and pulls up, does funny. This, and tells her to roll down the window, as if he's a stranger pulling up. So she starts to roll down her window, and right as she does, he starts to roll his up and then just drives off. It's hilarious. And she's like, she called me. She's like, what do I do to follow this up? And I'm like, nothing. It's a fluke, and it's a great fluke. It's nice that it's bringing attention, but all the people who are laughing at that video don't care that you're a musician, and they're not going to come back. Like, they're going to see it once, they're going to laugh and move on. So don't even waste your time stressing about how to follow that up.
Yeah, that video is hilarious. At first I didn't know he was her collaborator. And so I just lost it when I saw it, because he's just so deadpan. Like, he's just like this older dude, just like, hey, roll down your window. And she's like, oh, and rolls it down. And then just deadpan as his window goes up and drives away. That is a perfect example of, even though that wasn't a trend, like jumping on some of those trends where you can get a lot of views, a lot of likes, maybe even follows, but it's like, those people aren't there for your music. Now they're there because they saw a funny video that had nothing to do with anything. And so, I would agree that your assessment in that is nothing. There's no follow-up. And I think the temptation could be, as an artist, to try and recreate that over and over again. And then suddenly the followers aren't about music anymore. And you've got all these followers that don't care about the posts you make when you talk about music.
Yeah.
And I think that's the tension where that person at TikTok was saying about the pickle video. Well, follow up. And my question was, but it's not about the music. When that's when they said the microphone thing, I was like, that's dumb. But the idea that it's easy to get attention doing certain things, but what you need to do is maintain attention around what you want that attention for. And
to think about this in terms of marketing and results and funnels and all that, it's like essentially focusing it back on your artistry means you probably will be sacrificing follows and likes and views and stuff, but you're really sacrificing those things on behalf of the right likes and views and follows. So it's quality over quantity.
Yeah, and one of the things that in one of the training courses I went through, and was about TikTok, and they had some videos from people from TikTok. They were specifically talking about the algorithm was changing. They had changed the algorithm. So TikTok, I'll just say this right now. TikTok, I expect to see rapid and continue evolution of that platform. So what's working today may not work next month. I mean, it's when I see TikTok sponsoring all the football bowl games here in the United States, college football bowl games, which are massive television events. They're spending a lot of money on people that aren't teenagers doing dance videos or lip syncing or whatever. They're trying to get the mainstream audience there, which to me signals lots of change coming, because those people are not going to be there for just what 18-year-olds like to do on the internet. So anyway, the one thing they said is that you need to be thinking about this being about you. People should be there because they like what you do and the content you make that's uniquely you. And that's what you need to be focused on. They specifically said you could get lots of views and likes for doing trends, but at the end of the day, if you're a thought leader, a content creator, or a business, and you want people to be there because of you, then you need to make it about you. And to me, that was like a good reminder, especially coming from the platform itself, because it's easy to kind of try and figure out, oh, how do we game the system and get lots of likes? Because artists, we love seeing likes. But really kind of reorienting of like, yeah, you have to have people coming because of what you're doing. They're there for you, not because you did some version of a trend. Those things can be helpful and fun. And I'm not saying that like throwing out that trend episode that we did, but I'm just saying ultimately you need to think about, why are people coming here for me? Because that's building that anticipation that then you can parlay into success when you release music.
Well, yeah. So being you and defining yourself as an artist kind of runs in tandem with our next point, which is about the importance of understanding who your audience is, and understanding that your audience is not, it might not be what you think it is. And it certainly isn't what maybe the major label system thinks of as sort of a mass media audience, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. And I think this is something that artists should spend more time thinking about, because, you know, oftentimes we approach it like, well, if anyone who loves music would just hear this, they'll love it. Wrong. Not how it's going to happen. And it's like, well, we're even in a state where it's like, if anyone who loves country music hears what I do, they're going to love it. That may not be, if you're a country artist, that may not be true either. It may be that you need to really understand who those demographics are, because you have the tools to really speak directly to very specific people. And when you figure out who is it that really likes and enjoys your music or your style of music or the music that you do, it can be really powerful, especially when you start, buying like ads and things like that, or trying to build that anticipation. You need to know who you're speaking to. And that's something that I've been working on with Melody for various reasons. Just like, who is the audience for your music? You're trying to build this thing and start out sort of fresh. Who's the audience? Who are you speaking to? What's the demographic? Let's figure that out, because once you figure that out, that kind of sets the tone for how you communicate.
Yeah. And I think understanding also that your niche audience or whatever, it might not be entirely genre based, because our tastes are, probably more diverse than the average person's taste like 20, 30 years ago, but it might be kind of affinity and interest based. And, our friend Circa from Indiepreneur has a great little video where he poses the question, why do Christian artists do so well? And then he basically dispels the reason most people go, oh, because it's all a gimmick. And like, because there's the faith thing, as if that's a, I don't know what you'd say, like a cop out or a, how do you say that? Like it's a marketing trap or something. Oh, Christians have to fall into liking Christian artists. He's like, no. That's so cynical. It's really about the fact that they share a common, important, identifying characteristic, whatever you want to call it, this thing that the audience bonds itself around. And then here comes some music that fits whatever they need, whether it's indie piano Christian music or hard rock or whatever. But the interest group has already defined itself, and then this person who provides good music on top of that taps into this shared interest, which is a way more powerful thing than simply, I like country music. Well, what else do you like? Do you like NASCAR? Do you like golf? Do you like, so anyone who hasn't seen that video, it's good. But I think
I'll have to check that out.
Remember that as well. Affinity and interest groups and stuff can be really important. And one thing I did with Alice for targeting that first ad was I did kind of a more general version of that, but we started with sounds like artists. It was like Brandi Carlile, Joni Mitchell, Bonnie Raitt, this sort of group of Americana female singers that she could reasonably sound like. But then I limited it by people who were into live concerts, because one, that helps segment the group by people who are generally used to spending money, which maybe means they'll buy merch down the line. But also the video itself that we were serving up as the ad was a live, impromptu backyard live performance, which means, oh, I think they'll respond to a live video. And so just kind of maybe a way more general version of the Christian targeting thing.
Yeah.
But
it's always been a thing. It's funny that you bring that up, because this morning when I was in the shower, I'm thinking I should do a video series about the rise and fall of Christian music. But those that you don't know, that is absolutely my background. That platinum record that's on my wall is from a compilation album that I have a song on in the Christian market and all that stuff. I could go on for days and days talking about it. But the point that you make was actually a huge aha moment for me when I started working at CD Baby, because one, there was far more music being made than I ever imagined. And this was 2006. And the people that were our top sellers at the time, by and large, not all of them, were people directly speaking to affinity groups. One of our top sellers was an artist that made songs about sailing, and we got featured in sailing magazines. And so all these people who love sailing were calling us all the time to buy the music. Another artist, Marianne Kennedy, was all about horses, her whole branding, all her songs. And she would sell truckloads of CDs for $20 a piece to people who loved horses, and identifying that group. Moving forward to today, I think we see this play out in most recently in the NFT world, all these artists having success with NFTs. To me, when I dig deeper, it's because they are a part of that group. And it's those people who love NFTs that they're in that community, and they recognize them as an artist. And so they get on board because, hey, we're together. We're a part of the same affinity group. And going back to the pickle example, when that video happened for Melody, and after I had that conversation with the person at TikTok, I was like, well, this is what TikTok said. And I'm like, and for a little background, Melody does love pickles. I'm like, do you want to be known as the artist that love pickles? Because if that's what you want to lean into, there is a way to connect that and be the artist to the pickle community. But I don't think that's what you're wanting. And that's not what she wanted. But that is those things where it's like looking at those affinity groups as audiences and not just genre-based groups. Because I think, like you said, that's oftentimes how we think as musicians, but not how the world thinks.
Well, yeah, I was thinking again about the cynical take on it is like, oh, they have it easy. It's a gimmick because they have like a hostage audience. Or you could just say they're serving a community. It's not a hostage audience. It's a community that's already established.
I can tell you, based on the last Small Town Poets albums, there's still plenty of rejection in that world. That's a whole different thing. Which other affinity groups probably deal with as well. But there is that, I think there's the difference between, maybe it's not a difference, it's opportunity between looking at your music as just something that's for the mainstream market, that's on the radio, or something that has appeal to a group because there's a specific connection, whether the lyrics, your story, and all that. And I think really going after that and defining your audience is incredibly important in 2023 and moving forward, because with so much music out there, you need to know who your potential fan is more so than ever, because it's not just somebody that puts on a pair of headphones and likes to push the play button. It has to be more specific than that.
And the most, well, for me, at least for my music, the most difficult question is sort of the very business-like question. What problem are you solving? What problem does my music solve? Which is very, very difficult for me to answer myself. So I know it's not an easy thing to dig into, but if you can get close to that answer, you'll be in a good spot.
Yeah. Yeah. What do we have next?
Oh, next up, build anticipation and participation. So I think we touched upon this a lot, but basically you want to leave room for the story to unfold in real time and in ways you didn't script. So letting the John Prine tuba video with Alice kind of be the thing that gets all this excitement going. And then that leading to the decision to record the song, which then leads to this need to find a tuba, which leads to all kind of content. But along the way, Alice is shooting videos and commenting in the comment section to all these people being like, should we record it? Should we release it? You know, like all these questions that prompt people to feel like they're shaping her destiny and involved. And then, you know, she gets to do a progress report that people are already bought in on. And when the song came out, there it was. She had a video ad ready to go saying, hey, you liked this video? We were really surprised so many people loved it. It's great. Go listen now. And that's the video that's getting 0.001 cent clicks to Spotify, because she just did such a good job on the front end of getting people excited. Well, and just tie that to an earlier thing. We knew there was demand because we built it and we saw it in numbers. We knew what we were spending for the results. It's like, oh, we're ready to go now. Put this song out.
Yeah. And on our notes here, we have the Brittany Kellogg's story listed here. And that episode, if you haven't heard that episode of the podcast, definitely check that out, and how she went from pretty much 0 to 1 million followers rather quickly, especially when she switched strategies with how she was promoting music. But you know what was interesting is like the excitement started when she played the demo and identified an audience. You know, we talk about that tactic in that episode, played the song and really tapped into a very specific audience member profile. And the song exploded on TikTok. And then she goes through the recording process. She goes through preparing for release. Hey, everybody, it's out now. And there was just this massive demand built up for it before it was even available on Spotify. And when she started the journey, it was just about presenting the song and trying to create that demand. I think this 10 years ago, people would never have done this. Never like put out a demo and built anticipation around it. Put out trying to get people excited about.
It was like the lockdown with lawyers involved. If literally anything leaked before release night.
Yeah. 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 And this leads to like what we have on our notes, like a groundswell effect, that it builds that anticipation. So when you finally drop that track on a streaming platform, there's activity. And then what happens there harnesses the power of those platforms to go further for your music. But I really like the idea of building anticipation and participation, the participation being key. In fact, I was reading an article yesterday about Taylor Swift's songs on TikTok. It was written, it's on the Chart Metric blog.
Oh, I saw that, yeah.
It's an interesting article. They were talking about how her different songs off her new album are performing differently on TikTok and why some are doing better than others, and sort of speculating on that. But the one thing that really points to this is that they dropped I forget what the hashtag is. I don't have it in front of me, but the song Anti-Hero, which if you've been on TikTok or Instagram, You've probably seen this a million times. The song, the chorus hook is "It's me, I'm the problem." I forget
It's
all the
me.
lyrics.
Hi,
Yeah,
I'm the problem. It's me.
that's it. Yes, I don't know how I could forget it. It's like I think I'm trying to
At tea time,
suppress.
everyone agrees, or everybody agrees. See, I listen to Taylor Swift.
Yeah. uh, but they specifically launched that hashtag and that song and the challenge, like, show how you're the anti-hero, how you're the problem. And I thought what was interesting about it is, and what they were commenting in the article, is that people got very specific with the videos, and there was like this permission to be authentic, your authentic self, and own up to stuff and just have fun with it. And it exploded and had hundreds of thousands of videos and millions and millions and millions of views. And it's used all the time. But how it relates to what we're talking about is I felt like the participation was key in really making that a bigger thing than the other songs that she had, because they talked through about how the other songs, some of them didn't perform as well. Some of them that had hooks or lyrical snippets that you would think would be perfect for these platforms for people to make videos to, didn't do as well. But this one, where participation was invited and sort of set the parameters for that participation, seeding the idea, really made it take off.
I'll have to get back on TikTok and look at some of those.
They're on Reels too. I mean, I see them constantly.
Well, let's see what's next. I think we have 2 points left. All right, so the next point is strip away distractions. And so there's a few ways to take this. One is, in your own life, prioritize what your number one goal is for a particular release, or even a particular piece of content or email, because people's attention spans are short. You can barrage them with messaging and confuse them and paralysis of choice and all that stuff, where, as opposed to, hey, here's this simple email, it's 2 sentences long with 1 button, please do the thing. Like, same thing with your website. Keep the homepage simple, ask them to do one priority thing. And then I guess I hit it all. It's like, prioritize your own goal, strip away distractions, and then make things distraction free for your audience.
Yeah, I think that's, one of the things about building audiences. And, in that interview with Brittany Kellogg, she was talking about how, she's built up this massive audience on TikTok, but she's struggling at getting people off platform or following up in other places. And that's really where an area of focus needed to be for her. And I had some follow-up conversations with her about that. But I think it starts with understanding what your goal is. Okay, you've built this audience. What do I need them to do now? And then really starting to look at what benefits you most as an artist. What do you, first off, I mean, you got to be owning these fans, getting their email address or phone number or something. So, when TikTok gets banned in America next month, you don't wake up and have millions of fans that are just vanished overnight. And if you think I'm joking, you haven't been reading the news lately. We'll see what happens on that front. But also understanding what your call to action is. And that's one of the things I've been working on with a couple of artists. Like, hey, when I go to your link in bio on this platform, it's got all these things. When I go over here, it's got all these things. What do you really need people to do? What's going to benefit you right now? Let's focus in on that and make sure it's clear, so you're not just all over the place. And especially like you said, only require people to know and understand or do one thing at a time. I think that was, in old school email world, that was a massive problem. It'd be like people would try and put an entire newspaper in their email, and it's like, what am I supposed to do with this thing?
Well, also, in the interest of building a funnel where you want to lead people sequentially through a bunch of stuff with the certainty that they have gone on that journey, that's way easier to do if you only need them to take one step at a time. If you're asking them to do a bunch of stuff, you kind of lose track of where they're at. So it makes that journey way simpler for everyone as well.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
You talked about owning audience, which is sort of our last point. And I don't want to tell people necessarily what their priority goal should be and how they use those links and, what should be at the top of their website. But I would suggest it be about owning the audience as opposed to, hey, the new album's out, go hear it on Spotify. Like, that's secondary to give me your email, give me your phone number, buy my NFT, which to some degree gives you the ability to reach people again. Even something like joining a Discord server or something is closer to owning the audience than getting them to a platform where you can't track them. So I would say try to prioritize those goals, because those owning the relationship will be the way you can get them anywhere later. Spotify, Amazon, whatever. So, and then also be willing to try different ways of incentivizing people to give you that important information. Because, sign up for my newsletters is not going to do it anymore. It's like, I need a giveaway or behind the scenes access or something really cool I can't otherwise get simply by Googling something. So, like, how are you going to make it worth it for people to give you their email or phone number?
Yeah. Chris, after this conversation, I think I have a hot take.
Okay.
A really hot take.
Oh, okay.
Especially for my place of employment. My hot take is this. It's sort of a question, but a statement at the same time. Are we in a post-streaming world ecosystem now? Like where being an artist, like streaming, you got to have your music on the platforms, and that is a nice byproduct. But with all artists bitching and complaining about not getting paid from streaming, and all the advice from like the platforms, social platforms being make it about you and building an audience around what you do as artists, it seems like we're stepping into a new world where we need to look at it as that it's not about the end consumption. It's about the audience that enjoys what I'm doing along the way, whether that's playing shows, whether it's releasing music, whether that's creating content. But the idea that people should be there because they like you and your musical expression, your creative expression, your content that happens on so many different mediums. And you as an artist should be looking at the whole landscape of that and going, okay, how do I turn this into, how do I take this attention, this audience, and monetize it? Because if it's all just about pointing people to a platform where I know I'm not going to make much money, what am I doing?
Well, I would hope that we've been there all along, but I know we haven't. Like, I think a lot of successful indie artists realized that a long time ago. It's like, I need to prioritize this direct relationship because these are the only people I can ever count on to give a damn about me tomorrow and a year from now. So I need to prioritize them over any platform or any particular kind of attention. So I feel like you and I have witnessed plenty of artists doing that well. It's just all the mainstream conversation gets, I don't know, sucked up by TikTok and Spotify
and having your music on all those platforms is very important. But as we started the conversation, you could do all the mechanics of, hey, I had made sure Spotify had my music a month in advance so I could use the pitching tool, but then I did it and nobody cared. It's like, well, if you're relying on these platforms where music is consumed to do all the heavy lifting, you've got it upside down. Or the fact that, yeah, I don't know.
because they're not going to care until they see proof that people care.
Yes.
So get the people caring, and then they'll notice. They being the platforms.
Yes. And also, I was also thinking about a particular band that has been through CD Baby, Walk Off the Earth. They were exploded years ago when they did that video on YouTube, 5 people, 1 guitar, and the Godier, someone you used to know. Is that the name of the song?
Somebody that I used to know.
Yeah. Went crazy viral. And it seemed like that was probably just a one-off gimmick, but for them, it was not. All their videos are these crazy. They're so freaking talented. But I follow them on TikTok, and man, they just do the most creative, interesting videos. And there's a couple elements there that I think work for them. That one, they're just talented and they're doing a lot. They do original stuff too, but they do cover songs. They have a strong cover song strategy. They do very interesting versions of songs that have that effect. And one of the artists that I always think about when I say, this is an artist that took a song I already knew and loved and make me love it in a whole new way, even more, you know. And they just had one the other day that they did. I love that song Fireflies by another former
Owl City.
Owl City, another former CD Baby artist, Owl City. Who I've talked to his dad before, believe it or not. And he does stay up all night doing music and sleep all day. That's why I ended up talking to his dad. That's where the name Owl City came from.
Oh.
And in not that song Fireflies, but one of his other hit songs, that's actually what he's referencing. Anyway, that was sort of sad. But they did a version of Owl City's song, and they just have all these interesting things happening that they're executing live. And you're like, it's like just a stupid human trick kind of vibe, but it's also an amazing version of a cover song. And they're so talented as musicians. But the thing I've noticed is I love their videos. They pop up. I'm going to watch it. I've never streamed a single stream of their music, because for me, that's not the experience of how I experience them. And I'm a huge fan of what they do. So it's just thinking about how people consume music and consider their relationship to that artist and what they create is very different than what it used to be. And if all you're thinking about is the consumption on a streaming platform, you could be missing a lot of opportunity and not servicing your fan community in a way that's really beneficial to you as an artist.
That's a really good point. Sort of like everything in its own context.
Yeah. So ultimately, I think, the point with that is that if you're just throwing tracks on a streaming platform and feeling frustrated because nothing's happening, the streaming platform is just a point of consumption for a certain type of music user, I'll say. That you need to be focusing on building that demand, that participation, bringing people along for the ride, getting them excited for what you're doing. And that doesn't mean it all has to be on social media. It could be live shows. It could be live streams. It could be releasing music. But it's like, if you don't have that demand and building that anticipation and using the tools available to tell a story and gain interest, then it's going to be a hard road to just drop music on a streaming platform and hope some magic happens.
Yeah,
it can absolutely happen. But I think as artists, we're looking for a little bit more of a guarantee than just buying a lottery ticket.
Well, here's the one guarantee we can provide. This episode has talked about all the hard stuff. But if you just want to guarantee you check everything off the mechanics checklist, you can definitely do that. So go to release.cdbaby.com. You can use that free release plan generator, which will give you a checklist of things to do that, hey, you can do whether you've built demand or not. You can do whether you've got good music or not. And they're all important things to do. But again, it's just one side of the equation.
Well, and I think the thing that makes it hard to talk about the creative magic, the building an audience, the participation, getting people to care and come along for the ride. The reason why it's hard to talk about that is because it's going to be absolutely different for everybody. And it's not one size fits all. And that's why, especially the music business talking heads and marketing gurus out there who aren't musicians, they're not going to dive into that usually, because that's not the side of it that they might even have much experience with or know. They know oftentimes how to make an email stream that, hey, you send this email, and after that email, send this email. And that may or may not work. Usually they are based on things that have worked in the past, but they're not necessarily speaking to the creative magic that you yourself as an artist can bring, that makes you unique, that builds an audience, that makes people want to care. And ultimately, that's why people are going to show up.
Yes, indeed.
All right.
Well, now that everyone knows exactly how to release music in 2023.
You know what also is interesting about that we need to talk about in the social platform that has also changed some of my thoughts is that I've been using TikTok a whole lot more. And I'm sure as an audience grows, they push your videos more, but most of your videos on TikTok get shown to people that don't follow you. But TikTok absolutely gates that at certain intervals where it's like I could post a video and it'll sit there with the only view being me viewing it from our Small Town Poets account and no one's seen it for hours. And then suddenly it'll push to 100 people and then it'll sit there for hours and hours. And knowing that, well, if it's still just moving that video through a cycle, does it make it a point for me to post another one? Like I got to think more about building that groundswell, that interest, and pacing myself as opposed to just throwing stuff out there. I don't know. That's just one of the things I've been thinking about, and relating it back to also releasing music. Like we got to build this audience that cares and then keep feeding that interest, maintaining that attention and building off of that.
Well, we'll have much to consider in our next social media episode.
Yeah. Is it social media is not dead? It's resuscitated.
So it's been, what's the word? Resurrected, revived.
Yeah.
And then just talking about future episodes. I don't know exactly when this is on the schedule, but we're going to do one called video hacks for musicians, which I'm really excited about because you and I like to get into the like little nitty gritty apps, tricks, exact little, I don't know, tactics, whatever you call them. But
yeah, we saw a preview of a good one this morning.
Yeah,
that one was pretty cool. I don't even know if we'll be able to talk about that one when we do that because it's still very much in development. All right. Do you have thoughts or comments about releasing music in 2023? Are you changing your approach? Have you been noticing some shifts in how your fans and the audience you've built interact with you as an artist? We'd like to hear about it. Call our listener line at 360-524-2209 or email us at podcast@cdbabypodcast.com. And I know most of you know this already, but that phone number is not where you call in your audition for American Idol and sing into the phone.
True story.
So yes, that is not where you do that. I will laugh and have fun being entertained by it, but it's probably not going to land with the right audience. Speaking of the right audience. So yes, if you're releasing music and have thoughts, comments, questions, we want to hear about it. 360-524-2209, podcast@cdbabypodcast.com. And I look forward to a great year of like us taking things to a different level and maybe trying some new stuff, getting out of our box that we've been in, maybe some of our old habits that have kind of stayed their welcome. And with that, we've got some calls and emails. So let's get to it. All right. Let's start with an email. The artist name is Siberiak, and I think he called in on the last episode or one of the last episodes. But I think the group, because in parentheses, it says actually a couple. So here's the email. And he's not sure the name. The email address was in a different language. Looked like a Middle Eastern language. So I couldn't really make out what the name was, but Siberiak is the artist name. Hi, guys. I hope you're having a great holiday season. I wish you a blessed, happy New Year's Eve and all the Eves and Christmases and all the other calendars and religions that are still coming up. First question, a short one. Maybe it's going to make you laugh. Maybe I missed something. What's the deal with Spotify's dashboard thing? 0 listeners are listening now. We checked it with my friend from Texas. He's saying, I'm listening to it right now. It's on repeat. Later, his streams will appear in the stats. How many listeners and or do you need to make it work? Is there a cap or a diminishing return? So that was the first question. And the second question, on a serious note, at least as serious as I can get on December 31st, I know you probably were asked to give some numbers, some estimates. and the whole YouTube is flooded with questions like, how much can you make with Spotify and stuff like that. I know there is no way to tell for sure and to count or predict. And also, it's not polite to bluntly ask, how much do you make? That's why my question is a bit different. For some people, the answer won't have a value and would be very vague. But for some, it can give some clarity. So here's the question. Here it goes. In your, or maybe someone else's experience, how high is the possibility of starting to make $500 a month just on DSPs and with or without user-generated videos after a year of following standard, simple practices? Is it doable? I wish you enormous inspiration in the new year, tons of genius albums to make and to sell them in vinyl. I wish you guys great gigs. I wish, Kevin, that the industry will expand metadata the way it's in the movies. And I wish to Chris that NFTs will skyrocket.
Yes.
And may the hoochie poochie be with you. Happy New Year. So on that first question, I can tell you from experience that function breaks regularly. So a couple Christmases ago, because my band has several Christmas releases and a few Christmas singles outside of that, we got put in a very large playlist. And that song was getting like, at one point, I think it was getting like 8,000 streams a day from that playlist. And so right in the middle of that, I open up the app and it says 0 people listening right now. And I'm like, what happened? We were removed from everything. And when I take a step back, I'm like, oh, it's just an app. It's broken. This isn't official data. That's one thing you have to be aware of with the app, Spotify app, and a lot of the things you can see for Spotify for artists when you log in. It's not official data until it's reported out through your distributor. So sometimes those things break. I've logged into Spotify for artists before and seen like a week of data disappear. Or a day of data disappear. So, I don't think that thing is necessarily fine-tuned to be the most
reliable.
Yes. Because I opened it up a couple times this Christmas season. And again, because we have multiple Christmas releases, we always see a big growth in listening during the Christmas season. And plenty of times I opened up and said 0 people listening. I'm like, this thing's just broken.
I'm picturing you on that day being like, wait a minute, the 8,000 people, the song is 3.5 minutes. How many seconds are there in a day? Like doing the math to be like, it's mathematically impossible that 0 people are listening now.
Chris, you know me too well.
Or you just open the app on the 1 minute framework window that.
Well, also I did. I mean, that can happen as well. I mean, in the normal course of the year, we get okay streams on a daily basis, but it's entirely feasible to open up that app and there not be anybody listening at that moment. But I've tested as well. Like I've gone and turned on one of our songs and looked at it and it still said 0. I'm like, this thing just breaks all the time. It's not an official reporting source. It's more of just an indicator. So the second question, the thing that I do, and this is not the best method as far as like how much will it take to get $500 a month. What I would do is I would just take a number, multiply it by 0.0035, or maybe even 0.0025, and that'll tell you how much money you'll make from that number of streams in a general sense. Not exact. Don't do that and expect to see that exact amount of money, but it takes a decent amount. I don't know if I want to sit on the, well, we got the podcast up. Let me see. I'm going to do 1 million streams by that number times 0.0035. 1 million streams would be $3,500 by that metric. That's not an exact metric. Different platforms have different payouts. It depends on the platform. Depends on the type of user you have. If all your fans are people that have free accounts, that's going to impact that number and make it go down. But it's going to take a decent amount. That's why I think a lot of the shift in thinking about building that demand as opposed to dropping things on Spotify and just shouting into the void, go listen on Spotify, because it's like, well, save that energy and put that energy towards creative effort to build demand just for you as an artist, because the Spotify stuff will come if you just build that demand.
Well, my math is crap, but for the effort you'd have to put in to get 1 million people streaming on Spotify on a consistent basis, you could probably sell a t-shirt to like 500 of them and make the same amount. So, direct to fan, build your community, sell things to them as the priority.
Yeah. Yes. All right, let's move on. We've got a call. Here we go.
Kevin and Chris, this is Keith Fredrickson from the Get You Some Productions company. You know I'm on a walk in my neighborhood because I always call you when I'm on a walk in my neighborhood. In Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, for anybody who's from Brooklyn out there. I was listening to Bobby Osinski's podcast, which is about music production, and not cheating on you guys. I listen to your podcast religiously as well. And he said that coming down the pike is a possible trend starting with Spotify, where musicians who are not getting enough plays or not getting any plays or not getting above a threshold of plays will have to pay to keep their stuff on the platform. And he sounded like he was sure that this was going to happen with Spotify, that it was guaranteed. At least that's what it sounded like. So I, of course, freaking out a little bit about that because, I'm sure it'll be nominal, if anything at all, at first. But, once the trends get going, there's a chance that that could be, being on certain streaming platforms could become prohibitively expensive for some small musicians. As a matter of fact, it might even be problematic for your business. What are you guys hearing? Dish it to me. Come on. And thank you for everything you do. See ya.
He wants
Thanks
the inside scoop.
First off, I have not heard what Bobby is it Linsky? I forget how you pronounce his name.
Isn't it right?
Yeah. He's got a popular blog and podcast and has written some books. I've not heard exactly what he said, so I'm just going off on what Keith just relayed to us. My assumption is that Bobby was just doing like a music business prediction, just like Chris and I did on the last episode. There's stuff on the last episode that Chris and I said that's just us shooting from the hip, our experience, just us thinking, I could see it going this way. And that's what I would file that under. I can tell you, we have a very close relationship with all the DSPs. And this idea has never, ever come up. There have been other things that I've heard that have come up where I knew about years in advance. I knew that Spotify was working on having a direct artist upload portal for years. They did it. They realized it was a mistake. They shut it down within 8 months. So I've heard things about video and the requirements around video. Some of them have come to fruition a little bit. Most of them still have not. I've heard things about other stuff like that as well. Never heard anything like this. That doesn't mean Bobby doesn't know somebody at Spotify that brought that idea up.
Although, I don't know if this is, I'm not really revealing anything, but to be honest, you and I have, and other people have theorized about a world where platforms do assess whether it's worth their server space. I don't understand the tech side of it, but the technical infrastructure costs to maintain content that doesn't have engagement. Like, would there be a future where they question that? And in the past week, this is different from art and entertainment, but I log into my old Hotmail account and there's a warning. Your storage is almost full. Pay up. I haven't paid you in 24 years for this email. I go to Gmail and my Google Drive is like,
Oh, I get that one now too.
You're full. Pay up. I got an email from Dropbox today. Hey, up your thing. And I'm like, oh, this is a bear market. Y'all are having to cut costs and up the fees and stuff. So,
well, here's the one thing I will say. Is this the idea of, do we need all of this, came up by one particular DSP, not going to name names, but this was like in 2016. But their concern was not storage. And I think storage has become so cheap now that I think the stuff we're seeing like with our Gmail accounts is just them fishing for money.
yeah.
And also trying to maybe, I mean, because they got huge, that's a lot of storage of accounts they're managing that probably are mostly dead in some cases. But anyway, but the concern was more from the customer side and confusion. So I know that they stopped allowing like no more white noise. If you distribute a track that's white noise and it just says white noise, then not this one particular DSP won't take it. And they started cracking down at that time on tribute artists. And it was a big thing because we distributed an artist that had a massive following as a tribute artist, and they were changing how attribution had to be made to limit confusion, but also how many versions of a cover song do we need was posed at that time. However, that conversation faded. Never heard anything about it again. I even followed up with our person at CD Baby who managed that relationship, and nothing ever came of it again. And so, yeah, I don't know. I'm sure those things get discussed. I mean, I wonder about it too. If there's 100,000 tracks a day, like how much music needs to be out there?
Well, I can say, because the other part of the question was, are we scared for the future of independent music distribution? And I would say no, because whether they decide they want to charge more or for like storage space or availability is one thing, but they will always want, how do I frame this politely? Protection from having to do the customer service work. Essentially, we're the ones who have the relationship with the artists, and we do the customer service, all that stuff. The closure of Spotify's direct portal, I think, kind of proves they don't want to interact one-on-one with artists in that way, which is exactly why we exist.
When I remember I was at South by Southwest having a meeting with someone from Spotify when they mentioned that. I just burst out laughing. I'm like, you guys have no idea what you're stepping into. You think this is so easy with these tech savvy people that just instinctively know how to upload a track and attribute all the rights and all this, and it's just going to be seamless and easy and advance your business. And they found out real quick that we are a buffer for a lot of stuff that they don't want to deal with. And also there's this other thing, this indemnification issue, that if someone uploads that Beyonce track fraudulently directly to Spotify, they're no longer indemnified by us to take the heat for having delivered something that we shouldn't have. So there's things like that. But the customer service thing that comes to mind, like who are you going to charge that? How are you going to charge that money? Who would pay it? How would it be done? How do you determine it? Because a new release has no streams. So is it like a release that's 5 years old that has no activity? I mean, like, how do you determine? And also the idea of like Spotify, some of the major successes we've seen with artists is that a track that's been out for a couple of years, seen no activity, gets thrown into a big playlist, and suddenly it's generating hundreds of thousands of streams every month. How do you predict that? It seems like you're kind of going to an old school model of like the only shelf space we have are for the things that have come out in 6 months, which is the exact thing that the streaming world opened up. So I don't know. I've not heard anything like that.
And I'm just, if I remember correctly, Spotify's direct portal was it wasn't an open system, right? Like they decided to shut it down, having worked with a very select group of artists. Isn't that true?
It wasn't like,
So forget about the long tail of, the millions of artists who are out there who don't have massive amounts of streams.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? If you build that demand, focus on building that demand about you as an artist,
you won't have that problem.
Yeah, or you won't have that problem, but also platforms come and go. 5 years ago, 6 years, what year? We're 2023. What? In 2015, everybody only cared about iTunes. And then looking towards the future of Apple Music, Spotify was relatively new in the US, still gaining traction. Everybody cared about iTunes. That kind of fell away. Everyone cares about Spotify. If we think that that's going to be the indefinite future, I think we're not looking at history properly. So
it's a good call, though. I appreciate the call.
Yeah. I'd love to know where, if it was Bobby just like throwing something out, or if he heard a negative information. We haven't heard anything like that at CD Baby that I'm aware of. But what do I know? I'm just a podcaster.
That's all you do.
That's all I do here. All right, here's another email. Hi, Kevin and Chris. Love the podcast. I played out for years, but after having some luck at getting some TV placements back in 2010, I turned my focus to that ever since. It was a breath of fresh air to make money from music instead of just losing it. However, after losing a bit of musical fire, I realized that what I'm missing is occasionally putting out music for my friends to enjoy and hopefully playing a few live shows sometime again. That got me thinking that I used to have a bit of luck selling merch at shows and was wondering how I could most easily and affordably accept credit card payments in a cashless society these days, via PayPal, Square, another option. This would not be something I'd do very often, so keeping it affordable and with low commitment would be great. Thank you, Mike Steimel. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. Good question, Mike. I'm sort of in a similar boat with my band, with Small Town Poets. We play probably 5 to 10 times a year. And so we don't want any sort of commitment or expensive merch situation. We use a Square reader, and Square is great. You don't have to pay any monthly fees. You just pay when you do transactions. There may be some options and depending on your volume, you can open up more features, and it might be a different structure. But for us, it's like we always have to figure out what the password was for the account, find our Square reader, but that's a really simple way to do it. I know PayPal has some options similar.
And then I would also say, yes, have a PayPal and Venmo account. If it's easier for them to just stand in front of you and Venmo you, then why not do that instead of having to get a credit card out? But
yeah, I'm looking through hold on a second. I'm looking through let's see, my photos here, because I was in Canada and saw this thing that was perfect for artists. Where is it? It's in my thing and I can't find it. We'll have to bring it up on the podcast on a future edition. It was a thing where, here it is. It's called Tip Tap.
Tip Tap.
Showing it on my phone on screen is going to be silly, but it was this kiosk, little stand, and they made tabletop versions. They made sign versions, but it's got these, it's hard to see, but they've got these, everything's reversed, so I can't.
There it is.
These little predetermined things where you just tap your phone, tap and pay. And so I like, that's a perfect thing for taking tips or putting it at your merch table, or, when people are taking tips in the digital world, where they don't have Venmo or whatever, that people can easily just tap, give you $5. It's kind of got it. You can have a call to action, a predetermined thing, and it makes it super easy. And it might be worth doing a blog post about. I was going to reach out to the company because it's really cheap to get these, and you can put the graphics on whatever you want, and then they send it to you. And then when people tap, they process the transaction similar to a Square. And I just thought that was the coolest digital thing I'd seen in a while for the real world, for people who play. And if you're not giving opportunities for people to give you money, and you're playing live shows and don't have a digital tip jar option, you're leaving money on the table. I can tell you from artists I've been talking to, I've been shocked at some of the giant tips they've been getting playing shows. And so, especially because oftentimes
you could have one that's like $1 if you enjoy the music, $5 if you really enjoy, $20 for Sweet Child of Mine, $1,000 for Wagon Wheel.
Yeah, you could. It's really cool because you can do things like that. And what I liked about it is that oftentimes we miss out on money as artists because we aren't there physically to give a call to action. And people go buy the merch tape and walk out. But it's like if there's a little sign there that says, "Hey, like the show, help fill our gas tank," and they tap, bam, it's done. You get the money, they move on. So anyway, that was something interesting. We could always bring back the old CD Baby swipers.
Yeah, we had it with the carbon paper, and you like
the little knuckle. I'm sure we laundered so much drug money from that thing.
God, yeah. So if for anyone that doesn't know, we would ship artists in quotes, the swiper with the little carbon slips. They would run transactions and send us back in the mail the carbon copy of those, and then we would process the transactions one by one by hand and
put it in their account at CD Baby.
Put it in your account.
It was way before Square. Square kind of put that program out of business, and having your own credit card machine had big monthly fees and transaction minimums and all that kind of stuff. So we solved the problem, and most of it was legit artists selling merch. I was doing it as well, but we started to have to shut down accounts because there was some questionable things happening through our swipers. Hey, this is a great way to launder money. All right. Thank you for that email, Mike. All right. We got one last scam email and then we'll close things out. Hi, guys. I was listening to an episode where you read a few scam emails and then received this one. I looked into them some, and it looks like they hook you in and then ask for money. I love what you guys do. Thanks for all the advice and sharing your experiences as artists. Stay safe. Catherine Wacha. And this one is interesting because, as we've discovered doing these scam emails, there is a spectrum. On one side of the spectrum, there's legitimate businesses. On the other side, it's complete hysterical funny how fraudulent and stupid it comes off. And there's a sliding spectrum in between, from legit business to weird business to questionable business practices to shady to fraud to scam to, all the way to just ridiculous. And so sometimes these things aren't fraud, but they're bad. And I think this might fall into one. They're just preying on artists. So here it is. This is from SM Digital. It's always interesting to look at the email address as well, because the email address it came from is submit.sm.media@gmail.com. Most legit businesses will not be sending you a Gmail from Gmail. Greetings, I'm Simon, one of the music supervisors over at SM Digital Distribution. We specialize in music and film. We're contacting you today to see if you are interested in having your music placed with several film companies we are currently in production with. These placements include music, tunes for television, trailers, movies, series, radio ads, etc. If this sounds like something you'd be interested in, please respond at your earliest convenience with the following. Provide samples of your music, MP3, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, etc. All genres and styles acceptable. One of our reps will reach out to you with more in-depth details upon submission. And then it says submit music to licensing.sync.info@gmail.com.
Wow.
We look forward to connecting with you. Now, the reason why I think this one's interesting is because this may be someone trying to have, in quotes, a legit business, although I doubt it. I'm sure it's when you respond, it will get scammy real quick. But the thing that made me laugh about this one is because years ago, I was running the sync licensing department for CD Baby. And part of the reason why we started the department is at that time, so many film people loved cdbaby.com. When we had the retail store, they'd go and find very unique music that they needed. They'd reach out to the artist and the artist would never get back to them. Or the artist would assume it's a scam. And so that's why I'm like, all this opportunity is being missed by artists because they just don't understand what's being asked and what's happening. And even when I would email directly, like, hey, this is Kevin from CD Baby. There's this film company that's this production that's interested in using your song. And a lot of artists would be like, is this a scam? They're like, no. But the difference is I was being very specific about a specific opportunity, already heard the track, liked the song, or said that somebody liked the song and that there's an opportunity and I want to help you get through the process and make sure you don't miss this opportunity. Where this one's like, hey, we're doing all these things and it makes it sound like they like your music, but then they say, we want samples of your music. So put that in the scam pile, or at least the not very legit business practices.
That email definitely didn't have all of the warning signs because I didn't laugh at all. Usually when we read these scam emails, I'm cracking up because I'm like, oh, what nonsense. This one was sneaky.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guarantee you the follow-up starts to get more ridiculous if they responded. And so, at work, we have to keep taking these email fraud courses, training. And looking at the URL is always key. No legit business is going to have licensing.sync.info@gmail.com as their submission portal. And if you are a legit business and that's what you're doing, go get a real email address right away, please.
Because if you're not a scam, you look like one.
Yes. That's just some helpful business advice right there. So, all right. Well, thanks for those emails and call. Again, you can call our listener line at 360-524-2209 or email us at podcast@cdbabypodcast.com. This was kind of a supersized episode for starting out 2023 because 2023 is going to be a supersized year, Chris.
Yeah.
Big things coming. We've got lots to announce ahead about some DIY musician conference type stuff in the works. We will be at Folk Alliance.
Oh, yeah. Which is
coming
up
in
about a month.
Yeah.
Folk
less
Alliance
than a
is
month.
in Kansas City. That'll be exciting. My second favorite music conference of the year behind our own.
Yeah, it's a good one. It is a good one. And yeah, so lots ahead. So be sure to make sure you're subscribed. And yeah, speaking of participation, we want you to participate. Call that listener line, email us, let us know what's on your mind, your questions, things you're trying, maybe some goals for 2023. Just let us know. We'll share it on the podcast. Scam emails welcome too.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it, Chris.
Okay. We'll see you next week.
All right. See ya.